We're gonna wait just a moment and see if we have more attendees coming in, and we're gonna get started. Again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the community information session focused on special education, hosted by the Office of Community Engagement. I'm Daphne Kaiser, Assistant Superintendent of School Community Engagement, and your moderator for this event. During tonight's session, we will have school division and higher education experts, along with community partners who will discuss current special education trends, best practices, and programming. Our goal for this evening is to provide information that will be helpful for our school community, such as the school division's special education programs, inclusive instructional practices, support provided from higher education institutions, and community partners, and also information on how to access family resources. In addition, participants will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation part of the session. Tonight's agenda includes a welcome from Albemarle County Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Matthew Haas, an introduction of our panelists from the moderator, presentations from our esteemed panelists, a question and answer session, and Dr. Irizarry, Director of Equity, School, Family, and Community Relations, will close out our time together with final thoughts and next steps. We appreciate you spending this time to be with us. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Haas for the welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaiser. And I'm going to be brief because I want to make way for the whole program. I am really excited to be here tonight. And I'm very grateful to all of our panelists for being here, for all the really pertinent information that they're going to share with all of our educators and families so that we can improve the quality of learning and the experiences for our children with special capacities. Our mission statement for Albemarle County Public Schools is that working together as a team, we will erase the predictive value of race, class, gender, special capacities on our children's achievement and success, and that we will work together as a community to accomplish that, and we will know every student. And so our students with special capacities are not only a group that we want to be sure that they are well represented in all of our successes, we also want to be sure that we get to know each and every one of our students and tap in to all their special talents that they have and everything they bring to our school community to make it better for everyone. And an event like tonight helps us to do that. So I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Kaiser, and I wish you all well. And again, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haas. We have a really great group of panelists joining us this evening, and they will each share about 6 to 8 minutes worth of information related to their diverse roles in special education. So in a moment, I will introduce them in order in which they will present. But before I do that, I did want to mention we do have Spanish interpretation for this session. So if this is important or necessary for anyone on the call, please do take advantage of this. We will also be recording this session, and information will be posted on our ACPS YouTube channel. You will have access to this information for as long as you need to, and we will be sending it out to the community so that everyone will have an opportunity to watch, even if they were not able to attend tonight. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom. We will not answer them until after all the presenters have had their 6 to 8 minutes to speak. We will take 30 minutes at the end of the session after all the panelists have presented to answer questions. At this time, I would like to introduce our panelists. From the University of Virginia, and School of Education, we have a strong partnership with the university. Dr. Lysandra Cook Professor and Special Education Program Coordinator for Curriculum, Instruction, and Special Education. Dr. Mandy Rispoli, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, Co-Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Positive Behavior Interventions and Quantitative Foundation Bicentennial Professor. From James Madison University and the School of Education, another strong partnership. Ms. Jill Shiplett, Education Coordinator, Virginia Department of Education, Region 5 Training and Technical Assistance Center, TTech. Mr. Jared Hobson, Education and I'm Determined Project Coordinator, Virginia Department of Education, Region 5 Training and Technical Assistance Center, again, TTAC. From ACPS, Special Education and Support Services, we have Mr. Kevin Kirst, Executive Director of Special Education and Student Services, Ms. Katie Compel, Director of Special Education. And many of you have already seen Mr. Kirst and Ms. Compel on these webinars before. From the Parent Resource Center, our partners who support our students and families with resources and training, we have Mr. Michael Armstrong, Parent Resource Center Facilitator, Ms. Stephanie Hicks, Parent Resource Center Coordinator, Piedmont Regional Education Program, or PREP. And lastly, representing our wonderful Albemarle County Public Schools special educators, we have Ms. Christine Thomas, Lead Special Education Teacher, Journey Middle School. So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists now, and we will come back in a short while to answer questions afterwards. Dr. Cook and Dr. Rispoli from UVA, you are up first to present.
Great. Are you going to show the slides, or I can share my? I don't, Mandy and I'm not sure if Mandy and I are going to both pop up here, and if Eric will be sliding the slides. Okay.
I'll slide them if you can see them.
I can see the cover slide that would introduce myself and Mandy. So like Daphne said, I am the program coordinator for the special education program at UVA. And really, if any of you are interested in learning more about the programs, I would be your first points of contact. But Mandy and I are going to talk about just big picture inclusion, generally, if you wanted to. And I find it really interesting because I was under this same coming up as a special education professional. I so often just thought of inclusion as this service delivery model for students with disabilities. And I remember my first year here, I'm going to the Inclusion Summit in Richmond and being like, wow, I love Virginia is really thinking that this is bigger than just special education, because inclusion in its purest form is everyone feeling welcome, supported, and truly respected to belong together. So when I first started teaching in special education, it was much more of an exclusionary model. I'm actually older than IDEA or PL 142 before it, but we were still excluding people. We started then to keep them and make everybody has a right to a free and appropriate education, and really focusing on making sure everybody got instruction, but it was still either segregated or kind of pushing in. When I first started teaching, it was in the regular education movement time. And now we are truly realizing that inclusion is necessary for everyone. Everyone should have membership in their community school and their neighborhood school. They should be valued. They should be supported and connected. Inclusion is not the opposite of exclusion, and there is not one specific way that it's going to look, but our goal is that last kind of graphic where everybody in natural proportions is getting their supports and what they need within that community. Next slide, Eric. The most basic definition of inclusion is this, that inclusive education is students with disabilities are supported members of chronologically age-appropriate general education classes in their home schools receiving specialized instruction delineated by their IEP. within the context of the core curriculum and general activities. So this is the definition of inclusion. But Eric, next slide. But that is not what is mandated within IDEA. So yes, we would love to see every kid being able to go to their neighborhood school and feeling definitely supported. But it's not the same thing as least restrictive environment, because there are some children and parents themselves that would say, my needs are, I would be the least restrictive setting for me, maybe in a pull-out setting or in a push-in setting, or it may be a fully inclusive setting, or it may even be anywhere along that continuum. But the least restrictive environment mandates that we, states and school districts, establish policies and procedures to ensure that to the maximum extent possible and appropriate for that kid, children with disabilities are included in public or private institutions, or other care facilities are educated with children who are not disabled, and that special classes, separate schooling, or removal of children from regular education environments occurs only when the nature or the severity of the disability is such that the education in regular class with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So our LRE mandate is separate from our goal to have an inclusive, community inclusive world. The benefits are far. It improves learning and developmental outcomes for both the students with disabilities, and those without, promotes positive social relationships for families and children of all abilities. It helps us create an inclusive worldview because we all are understanding that there are different needs for everyone, creates high expectations for each child to reach their potential, increases interactions with peers with and without disabilities, also with teachers with and without disabilities, teachers that have different experiences as well. We have seen in many other research studies benefits to academics, as well as behavioral benefits, as well as higher rates of post-secondary outcomes, better outcomes for students with disabilities when they do graduate, whether that be in the school setting or in a workplace. And there is also a lot of benefit and perceived benefit, not only benefit that we've measured, but benefit, reported self-report benefit from students and their parents for those children without disabilities. And then Mandy will take over the next couple slides.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So inclusion is sort of this nebulous idea. It's hard to sort of define it or see it, right? We sort of feel it rather than see it. Here are kind of three anchors that can help us understand and look for environments and look for ways that we can help promote greater inclusion for all students. These three focus areas are access, participation, and support. And so by focusing on these at all levels, so at the school division level, looking at access, participation, and support at the school building level, and in all spaces and classrooms within that building. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about each one of these areas. So access talks about providing access to different opportunities to learn, different people, different activities, different curricula. Access is all about making sure that all individuals can engage with the materials, engage with the environments in which they're learning and living and working. One way to help promote access is through something that's called universal design for learning. And I think the important thing at this point is that universal design for learning says we need to stop retrofitting and trying to figure out how do we now take this curriculum or take this environment and figure out how to adapt it back for an individual or forward for an individual with a disability, but rather starting the design process with individuals with differences in mind. So making sure that all physical spaces are accessible to everyone, that students have a variety of ways that they can access content, that they can express themselves, that they can engage with one another around materials or opportunities. Next slide, please. And when they have access, then students can actually participate. And so this is where we're making sure that our adults have high expectations for all students and are thinking about how to promote belonging for all students so that we don't have visitors who come to our class, but we have members of our community at all times. So here's just some examples of how we might support participation. I think what's important here is thinking about the individual and what are their strengths and how can we help leverage those strengths to make sure that they're accessing their peers, accessing different settings, and accessing the general education curriculum to the maximum extent possible. Next slide, please. Great. And so the last piece of inclusion, so access, participation, and supports. And so supports is thinking that we've designed these environments or these contexts or these lessons from the ground up, thinking about individuals with differences. But we also know that that's not the end of inclusion, right? Even though we have access, we have participation, students need individualized supports. And that might look like specialized instruction. That might look like different accommodations or adaptations to the content or to the environment or to the way that they can participate and respond and engage. These supports for students are important, but when we talk about inclusion, we're also talking about supports for faculty to be able to collaborate with one another, for school divisions to be able to develop shared visions and understanding of what membership really looks like for this community. Support for families to partner with schools to help make decisions about the best educational opportunities for their child. And so we have supports for teachers, supports for professionals and families, and supports for students. That's what makes inclusion work. Next slide, please. This is from a case in 1993. And I really like this quote at the end of the court decision, which is, inclusion is a right, not a privilege for a select few. So inclusion is not just for students with mild disabilities. Inclusion is not just for students who don't engage in challenging behavior. Inclusion is for all, regardless of disability or label or support needs. And it's the job of the individualized education program or planning committee, sometimes that's called the IEP team, to help understand what that's going to look like for an individual student. Next slide. And this goes back to Lysandra.
And it's just our contact information. The Sheila Johnson Center for Clinical Services, we have a lot of teacher education programs. We have professional studies programs and coursework that many people can take, whether they're other service providers or adding to your licensure. So definitely let us know. And I know that we are working very closely with Albemarle County Public Schools to design different ways to address not only making sure that we can provide teachers that are going to support a fully inclusion model for everyone, but also to address the teacher shortage that we have. So I look forward to answering questions later in today.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Cook and Dr. Rispoli, for your comments this evening. We're going to move to our next presenters. Ms. Shiplett and Mr. Hobson from JMU's TTech.
Hello, thank you for having us tonight. I am Jillian Shiplett with the Virginia Department of Education's Training and Technical Assistance Center. Thanks for spelling that out in the beginning. Everyone knows us as TTech, which is great, but if you're new, right, that's pretty helpful. Jared also is a colleague of mine, and he's going to talk about the Omniderman Project that started at James Madison University right after I'm finished. So right now up on the screen is just a quick snapshot of our website. And so this is hyperlinked, and the resources, of course, will be provided to you. And this is just a good visual. And I'll put this up here because I purpled out the rest of the slides. I apologize, but there are TTechs all over the state. JMU's TTech is a service for you. So make sure you're looking for that purple TTech. So we are a professional development center, training and technical support center, and we service the community as far as public schools. So while our services might not be a direct link to you, right, the more we know, the better. And so as you're having conversations with people in your school community, just know that we are a support that they can tap into. So up at the top, just real quick, you can check it out a little bit later to go into detail, but the main work that we do is a lending library that's free to anyone in our Region 5. There is also a request for services tab. And again, that's for anyone in public schools that may want a little bit of support with working with students with disabilities. And then of course we hold professional events, and that tab is there as well. Let's jump on to the next. Okay, we are a statewide project. Like I said earlier, make sure you're looking for the purple if you're in Region 5. We are housed at universities all over the state, and we're just a branch of the Virginia Department of Education. Even though we are housed at colleges, we really do work in the schools. We have an office here on campus, but our work is out supporting current administrators, teachers, and paraprofessionals, and essentially anybody in the public schools that's supporting students with disabilities. all that good information that was just shared from our UVA partners, we're those people in the building helping teachers implement those inclusive practices. Okay, okay, where are we? Okay, so what do we do? What does that look like? So quick bulleted list, just a quick snapshot. Like, who are these people? So we leave our JMU offices. We jump into schools, consultations. Personally, it's one of my favorites. That's teachers reaching out to us saying, hey, we're having some behavior challenges. Hey, help me find some assistive technology. Hey, I'm feeling kind of lost and need some professional development. We offer large scale workshops, small scale workshops, things over the summer, webinars such as these for teachers after school, or heck, we'll come in and support teachers during a department meeting. Looks very different in very different ways. Lending Library, I mentioned earlier, this is a free resource for teachers, administrators, anybody in the public schools to check out not only books, but even assistive technology. A lot of times when students are going through the evaluation process, are coming new to the whole world of special education, it's sometimes kind of frightening. And so one thing we can do to support teachers and families is welcome them into our building and help them find or try out different assistive technology devices or any kind of materials that they may want to lend. Of course, check out our website. And then we also have a newsletter that goes out to our schools just to throw little tidbits of professional information in small chunks, keep them in the loop. High leverage practices, you're going to hear about that. Inclusive practices, little snapshots about keeping our educators current in the world of special education. The next slide, again, just a quick little visual I wanted to provide. We have a model classroom on campus that we invite teachers and administrators in to look at high leverage practices and explore technologies used in the classroom. We have a little video series that we collaborated with a partner at the University of Virginia to provide resources to teachers, right? We talk about teacher shortages and sub shortages. It's not always, easy to leave their building and come to us. So we just get creative and create recorded webinars and videos to send to teachers. And then the newsletter that I talked about. And then lastly, quick little picture there of our library resources. As a parent, you may want to explore that part of our website because of the lending library, where you can collaborate and work with your teacher to get an account. And then lastly, our contact slide, that's my information. Check out our website, email me directly with any questions. If I can't help you, I'll find someone who will. And next up is Jared to talk about the Omniderman Project.
Thanks, Jill. Sorry if I made it difficult because I didn't use the slide template. Always have to be a rule breaker.
No problem. We're just reloading the slide here.
Okay. Well, I can go ahead and start talking as you're loading that up. Thank you all for having me. I'm Jared Hobson, and although I work with Jill at TTech, part of my job as an inclusive education coordinator, the other half, I work for the Omniderman Project, which very similar to the TTech dynamic that Jill showed with her graphic. We're spread out across the state, and I'm representing Region 5, so that's our region. I also have another colleague in the office who works with me as well. So we're a team of two, and we work very similar to the TTech model, consulting with teachers, working with school buildings, and working with divisions on self-determination. So just really quickly to run you through what Omniderman is. It's basically a project focused on self-determination of youth and families, centered on youth voice and family voice. Self-determination refers to an individual's ability to make choices and take ownership and manage their own life. And we do that using the CAR model, as you can see on the screen. The first part being competence, and that's the know how to do things related to self-determination. Autonomy, which we refer to as the freedom to, and that's the freedom to make these decisions and follow the path that you want to follow. And then the relatedness component, which is the connection in your network and all of the things that are engulfed in your world. Next slide. the way that we do that, I've divided it up into 3 pieces, and really this is a crash course, just because of the amount of time. So I'm going to try to do that really quickly. So the first part is skills, abilities, and beliefs, and that's our IMD elements, which I'll show you in just a minute. The second part is developing that social capital, and that could be just identification of these folks, and that's really the students' network. And then after you have those 2 things in place, having an opportunity and a space to practice these skills. Next slide. All right, so skills, abilities, and beliefs, and these are our elements. The skills being choice-making, decision-making, and problem-solving. The abilities, the ability to set goals, to self-regulate, and self-advocate. And then these beliefs, that internal locus of control, or I have control over what I do. Self-efficacy, your own ability to succeed. And then your self-awareness, just being aware and understanding who you are. So these are the kind of things that we work on in our program. The next part, we work with not just our students, but also the families and the educators and other folks that are involved in the students' education. So we really try to round that up. And that includes, which is really not reflected in this, is any community opportunities and community members that may be a part of the students' social capital. Next slide. And then finally, the best part, we provide opportunities to practice, and we do that through a number of ways. We have local events, which that would come through me being the local representative, but also we have statewide events where we get everyone together. We have a large group of youth leaders. Those are individuals that are a part of this program and have been a part of this program for some time, and they take leadership roles, and they do a lot of the things that I do. They do it alongside me, and we really focus on making sure that happens, because we want this to be about representation, and we want that piece of understanding what it's like to go through something as an individual with a disability, and not just reflect that through our own perception of it, but having that lived experience represented. Next slide. Oh, I had some more slides, but this is not one of them. So I can't talk about this slide, but I'll try if you all really want me to. We can see if the next slide.
Sure, I'll see if I can find them if you want to keep talking for a second.
Yeah, that's okay. So actually, if you all could send out some links, the rest of my presentation was really just about resources that we have. And if you go to the Omniderman website, I wanted to highlight 3 specific resources. So the first one being, we have a parent path to success. And that is a compilation of steps of if you're navigating the self-determination process. These videos, these resources will help you do that in a linear fashion. The second is the critical decision points. And critical decision points, as you're navigating not just the disability side of things, but in general, the school, there are moments in the student's education that you're going to have to make some decisions. And we have some things to think about, things to consider, understanding your rights and things like that. We have a compilation of videos in kind of a module setup that you can go through and learn about what those are and things to think about. The last one, and this is something we pride ourselves on, is ensuring student involvement in the IEP process. And this is kind of our bread and butter, really making sure that the student is a part of that. Their voice is represented, but also they're understanding this process and being a part of it. We have developed and released some modules on this process and how students can be involved. And it's a 4-video series where, as a family, you could work through this, the student could work through this. It's really up to you how you'd like to do this, but it goes through some of our most used resources, such as the goal planner, filling out some of our other really our tools that are used across the state. But I want us to think about this project as more as just a couple of tools like the 1-pager and the goal plan. All right, next. Finally, I just wanted to highlight one of our partners that I don't know why I didn't bring this up earlier when we were talking about this event tonight, but we actually have some folks from the Center for Family Involvement on our project, and they are a great resource. If you go to their website, they offer a lot of family-centered resources, such as an actual network of folks that can be connected with you. They also have a hotline where you can call and ask questions, and some other formats for gathering information that's more family focused. And my last slide is just an invitation. If you're interested in this, this is something that we do every year. We right now have just released our application for the Youth Summit, which is coming up this summer. And it's a 3-day event where it's like all on campus. Everyone comes, the family, the student, and everyone gets together and we do a wide variety of self-determination activities. We learn, we network, we have a great time. And I just wanted to personally invite you all. If this is something you'd be interested in doing, there's an application on there that you can fill out. It's all inclusive. So when you come, everything's provided if we accept your application. And if you want more information on this, I'm happy to share that with you. My email is on the next slide. And like I said, if you want to get more information about Omniderman, you want to reach out, learn some more, I'm happy to share via email. Also, we're a great group to plug to your teachers as you're working, collaborating with them, and say, hey, I heard about this program. Are you using any of these things? Have them reach out to us. We'd love to work with them.
Thank you so much, Jared. And just a reminder to all of our guests tonight that this presentation will be posted and sent out soon, so including all the live links. So don't feel you have to write everything down, but just wanted to make that reminder.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shiplett and Mr. Hobson. We are on next to Mr. Kirst and Ms. Compel from ACPS Special Education and Support Services.
Thank you. So Katie and I were going to do an overview of how we've implemented special services, special education services for children with disabilities in Albemarle County schools, sort of going big picture down to some of the more specifics. So if you could, the first and next slide is really the core of our services, what we've pushed out to the schools to make sure that as much as possible, every child is in their neighborhood school and have access to special education services. This is defined, again, we'll spend some time with more evidence-based practices and specialized instruction for certain populations, but the generalists provide resource, push in, pull out collaborative classes in all of our neighborhood schools. We call these cross-categorical programs on that continuum. This includes, so a special ed teacher in every school and many related services like speech, services for children that are deaf or hard of hearing, have blindness or are visually impaired, other related services like occupational therapy, physical therapy, and even psychological services are available in all our schools, in addition to adapted physical education. So that is really the core that we try and push out.
And then we have some specialized structures that we put in place to work towards the goal of being able to serve all of our students with special needs. One of those is early childhood special education, which is for students in preschool with disabilities. We do serve students aged 2 to 5 along a continuum. And so we do have a continuum of all the way from students in their neighborhood daycare center that we go and support all the way up to classrooms for students with disabilities that have students without disabilities in them and students with autism that specialize even more in being able to provide those early intervention services. Next slide. To paint the picture of where are those programs, we have early childhood special education programs in 8 of our schools, which are listed there: Baker Butler, Broadus, Brownsville, Hollymead, Mountain View, Murray, Stony Point, and Stone Robinson. Next slide. We also have what we call a blended program, which means we partner together with the Virginia Preschool Initiative and Title I to provide services to students with disabilities in a program at Agner-Hurt. And then, like I talked about with our specialized program for students with autism who need early intervention, we have 3 of those at Broadus Wood, Stone Robinson, and Woodbrook Elementary School. Another one of our specialized structures that we have in place that serves students K-12 is autism-based. And many of you, right, if you have been in Albemarle, know that as A-BASE. A lot of times we get asked, what does BASE stand for? And it stands for Building Appropriate Supports with Evidence. The A stands for autism. And we'll talk about some other bases further on in the presentation. A-BASE is designed to support students with autism who are in the regular general education environment with their peers. There's a teacher and teaching assistants who have specialized training, skills, and approaches that we know are evidence-based practices in serving students with autism. We do have them right in our K-12 schools. Those programs are also supported by our board certified behavior analysts, otherwise known as BCBAs. I think one highlight, I just want people to walk away with the difference of A-BASE. A-BASE is not a location, a self-contained program at all. It really is a structure that allows us to specialize in supporting students with autism in their least restrictive environment. Next slide. Just to paint the picture of like we did with preschool, where are those? In our elementary schools, we have A-BASE programs at Agner-Hurt, 2 at Baker Butler, Brownsville, Crozet, Greer, Hollymead, 2 at Mountain View, Murray, Scottsville, 2 at Stone Robinson, and 1 at Woodbrook. We also have them in all 5 of our middle schools on the screen you can see we have 2 at Burley, 2 at Henley, and 2 at Walton, just based on size. And we also have the A-BASE in all of our high schools to include Albemarle, Monticello, and Western.
So, and just a note on the BASE models, they also serve a purpose to create structures to have the supports that kids need in place, like the staffing models. And when I started and we began the BASE models, starting with A-BASE, we also looked to maximize inclusive opportunities for kids. So I just want to speak back to what was mentioned already, meaning it was designed up front not to be, as Katie said, self-contained. It was default out into the classrooms. And let's give enough staffing that would support children to be with their peers, and as much as possible. We don't have a sort of a longitudinal chart, but how much that's grown over I think it was like 9-10 years, 10, probably even 11 years, we've been doing that. So the next is, so after A-BASE, we were seeing successes at A-BASE, and that is having children remain at our public schools with the supports that they needed and the board certified behavior analysts and trained staff to support them. We then increased, we said, we need to go further and address behavior, which gave rise to what we call BBase, Building Appropriate Supports with Evidence for Behavior. And unlike A-BASE, we looked at our evidence-based practices for children that typically do not have autism, right? It's another group of kids that are really struggling with emotional regulation and or just challenging behaviors that have been identified through the special education process. And the core tenet, the philosophical underpinnings of BBase is Dr. William Glasser's work with choice theory that proposes that we work, and I believe it's consistent with the division's goals and values and mission is to build relationships, deep relationships with each of the children in BBase. Again, it is not a self-contained model. It is a resource model. The kids are default out in their classrooms, and we would build relationships, try and meet their needs, work with them to problem solve through a process of ownership, much like that Jared was mentioning with the Omniderman Project. A lot of similar values are brought out through BBase to get their needs met in a way that we call responsible. That is, that the kids can get their needs met while at the same time respecting other children and adults getting their needs met. That's our definition of responsible. We've also built in some restorative practices to BBase as well, called restitution. And what we try and do when kids make a mistake, they have an opportunity to make it right. We minimize the use of punishments and rewards, our external types of motivators, and really want to push up that intrinsic need-fulfilling behavior and honestly love for learning it and wanting to be part of our community through just constant working with the kids and respecting where they're at and where they want to go. So that is basically the BBase model. Again, much like A-Base, we started at elementary, and then the bases followed the kids that needed the support as we grew. So at elementary, we have B-Bases at Agnerhurt, Broadus-Wood, Brownsville, Greer, Hollymead, Mountain View, Red Hill, and Woodbrook. And then extended to the middle schools, we have Burley, 2 B-Base models at Journey. Lakeside has one, as well as Walton. And then at the high school, 2 B-Bases at Albemarle, 2 models at Monticello, and 1 at Western Albemarle.
And another structure we put in place to serve students is curriculum base or C-base, right? And this structure has been called a lot of things, right, over the years. Many people who have been here a while used to know it as functional skills or VAP class. But we really started talking about VAP, right? The Virginia Alternative Assessment Program is just a test, right? And so we didn't want the classroom to be so focused on the test, but really on the supports that students need. And so we started talking about VAP, which is an assessment, is really intended for 1% of students with disabilities with significant intellectual disabilities who cannot participate in the standards of learning assessments due to their need for significant modification of the curriculum. And so we designed curriculum based to provide just that, right? The curriculum at the students' level that they can engage in, participate in, and make meaningful progress in, but also to have those inclusive supports in being able to access their typically developing peers, to be able to build those community relationships, to be able to expand their scope beyond just their other students in their classroom with disabilities. Like A-Base, very similar to A-Base, the teacher and teaching assistants have specialized training approaches and strategies that we know are research-based and effective for students who have significant challenges accessing the depth and breadth of grade level or standards of learning, the standards, right? The grade level standards. And so the goal of C-Base we developed was really to create more opportunities for inclusion while supporting access to the curriculum. Next slide, please. We have C-Base in many of our elementary schools, as you can see there. Baker Butler has 2 programs, Broadus-Wood, Brownsville, Greer, Hollymead, 2 at Mountain View, Murray, and Stone Robinson. And then at our middle school, we have C-Base at all 5 locations. Burley, Henley has 2, Journey has 2, Lakeside, and Walton. We also have C-Base functional skills at all of our high schools, 3 at Albemarle, 2 at Monticello, and 2 at Western. And in addition, we have our post-high program listed there. And that is our program that serves students with disabilities who have not received a standard or advanced diploma, age 18 to 22. And the focus of post-high is really similar to CBase, but to extend to get those students ready for post-secondary life, whether that's independent living skills, whether that's job coaching, whatever that may be, to provide those supports. But it still follows the same model as the other CBases in providing that specialized service approaches and strategies to meet students where they are and provide those inclusive opportunities.
And it was, I think it was one of my first years here. I want to say it was like 98, 99, 1999, just before 2000, where Post High was actually built by students in a cooperative way with TTech. And purposefully, it's a house purposefully designed for individuals with disabilities to have maximum access to not just classrooms, because it wasn't it's a house where instruction can also occur. So it was a wonderful first sort of venture of me entering Albemarle County Schools way back in the day. But in addition to Post High and all of the other programs that we've just talked about inside our public schools, we also have a few that extend through our community, and then I'll talk a little bit about those that go beyond our immediate community. So these other programs, we support students with disabilities at TTech through specialized vocational services, that students there arrive at TTech and get support to participate in competitive employment in our community. So those are tailored services with that end goal of having a student be involved in competitive employment in a job that they want, that they enjoy. In addition, we have special education services and support at TTech in the, I have to get this right, all these acronyms, right? The ISAEP program, the Individualized Student Academic and Educational Plan. I believe that's right. Basically, it's the GED preparation program. So students, but it's not just the GED. Students work toward their graduate equivalency diploma, but also are involved in vocational experiences, as well as working on some core classes like economics and personal finance, for one, and getting certification in that. And then we have the Center for Learning and Growth. We support students that want to be a part of this. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Center for Learning and Growth. We have special educators over the Center for Learning and Growth. Center for Learning and Growth is our alternative school, a long-term suspension services for students that do exhibit behaviors not related to their disability in our public schools that need a break. And there they get the supports that they need in order to restore and return to the public schools. So that's Center for Learning and Growth. We have special services there. And then Center One, I apologize, for students that choose a pathway that may involve an experience at Center One. We also have supports in place there to really enable our kids to experience the full array of opportunities. We partner with the Piedmont Regional Education Program, which is located down behind Albemarle High School in the Greer campus and Journey. Ivy Creek School is there. We have students from Albemarle County that are experiencing needs beyond what can be met in our public schools. But we also contract with Piedmont Regional Education Program, also known as PrEP, for assistive technology specialist services and orientation and mobility services for those students with visual impairments. And lastly, I'm taking this one too, right, is the Children's Services Act. In addition to this continuum of services Katie and I just reviewed, there are students that require a program above and beyond even those that we previously mentioned, that their needs cannot be met in our neighborhood schools. And for that, we partner with private schools in our community. And we put a few here at the bottom as an example. Elk Hill has a Private Day School, Keys Academy, and the Virginia Institute of Autism, to name a few. They are considered private day placements. We pay tuition for their very specialized services for students with disabilities that require such services. And there are a few kids that even private day services cannot meet their needs. And in order to provide an appropriate educational plan, we have children that require residential services, 24/7 around the clock care. And then lastly, for some students to maintain their placement in our communities or in their private day placement through the Children's Services Act, which is a funding mechanism at the state level, we could access some wraparound services, which many times it has many different forms, but it's services for kids. And then this is a requirement, so sort of to back up a little. And then lastly, after all those public and federal and state funds support our kids with disabilities, there's this thing, and it is something we present every year to the school board, something called set-aside funds. There are children with disabilities that attend private schools or are homeschooled in Albemarle County that the federal and state government has required Albemarle County, like any public school in Virginia and across the nation, to do. Basically, set aside a proportionate amount of funds for children with disabilities whose parents have unilaterally placed them in private parochial or homeschool programs, and to come up with programs to at least give some support to those children. So I wanted to mention that because that too is part of our program in special ed in Albemarle County Public Schools.
So that's the overview of all of the special education services along the continuum that we offer in Albemarle County. Right, in summary, before I talk about the challenges, I think it's important for me to note that Albemarle County in the Department of Special Education has a lot that is positive and that is something to be talked about, right, with, I think, great pride. We have amazing teachers, we have amazing teaching assistants, we have fantastic partnerships with parents and students, we have community relationships, and I think those are all of our strengths. But like any area, right, in not just education, but right in the current state of the world, we do have challenges. And we just wanted to highlight our top 3 challenges, but not just talk about the challenges, talk about what is it that we're doing about it, right? Because it's one thing to identify the problem. I think it's important for you all in our community and our school division to know what is it we're doing about it more than just talking about it. Okay, next slide. One of our challenges is centers around students with IEPs who have intensive needs, right? The challenge is that there are students who require a high level of specialized skill and supports that we cannot currently provide in the public school setting. One of the more unique challenges in recent times, I would say since the pandemic, has been that private schools used to maybe have a month, 2-month waiting list at most, now are up to months, and I'm talking 8-10 months, up to years long, as much as, right, one private school just gave us a 24-month waiting list. So that has been a unique challenge in that we have some students we are not able to serve in our schools, but there are long wait lists. So when we started to wrap around that challenge, what could we do about it? We worked to create an intensive support team, and that has just begun recently. And it is an in-house Albemarle County Public Schools initiative to serve our students with IEPs who require that high level of support while we're working towards finding a private school experience, but allowing them to continue to go to school, continue to make meaningful educational progress, but wrapping around with them with those intensive level of support. We're looking to begin in a couple weeks our secondary program with a long-term goal of also having that for an elementary program as well. Our second challenge is our growing students with disabilities population, not just in numbers, but the challenge really is that we do have growth in students who are with IEPs, who are requiring specialized services. But we also have, right, difficulty with space across the board, not just in special education, but space for expansion in schools is a challenge, especially in some of our areas where schools are crowded and there isn't much room for growth. So we started wrapping around, how do we problem solve that? And one of the ways that we are looking to problem solve that is expanding our base, as Kevin and I talked about, A-base, B-base, C-base, and even early childhood special education. We don't currently have, we have it in many schools, but we don't currently have it in all of our schools. And so one of our focuses on expanding our base models to be able to keep students in their homeschool when possible, but doing that in a thoughtful, manageable, and most importantly, fiscally responsible way. Next slide. And then out of our top three, the next challenge is hard to fill positions, as is in education overall, but especially for us in our more specialized positions like A-base, B-base, C-base, early childhood special education. The national teacher shortage impacts us in special education, just like it does the general education, but for us, it's even harder to fill. And so, right, like all of our departments, but special education specifically, we're partnering with universities like you've heard with JMU, UVA, we're doing early recruitment and some grow our own initiatives with staff in our ranks who are interested in moving into the special education field. And with that, pass it along to Mr. Armstrong and Ms. Hicks.
Thank you, Katie. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to start off by thanking Dr. Kaiser for putting this community information session together and allowing me to be part of it. So thank you, Dr. Kaiser. My name is Michael Armstrong, and I am Albemarle County Public Schools Parent Resource Center facilitator. I've been a special educator for 27 years, the majority of those with Albemarle County Public Schools. As the facilitator of a parent resource center, I strive to use that experience and knowledge of special education law and procedures to guide parents when they reach out with questions concerning their child's education. My contact information is on the bottom of the slide should you ever have a need to reach out to me. And next slide, please.
And hi, I'm Stephanie Hicks. I'm the Parent Resource Center Coordinator at Piedmont Regional Education Program. And we currently serve 6 school divisions, including Charlottesville City, which is the closest one to us, but the rest around us. And I am available most days at my office as well. Mike would be your first point of contact if your children are in school in Albemarle County. But we also do have a deal where if someone needs to reach out and he's not available, they can contact me. I've been on the Albemarle SEAC for about 7 years now, and I have 2 children who've been through special education in Albemarle County. Next.
So a logical place to start would be to talk about what is a parent resource center. The parent resource centers are basically the bridges, if you will, that connect families and schools and their communities. The goal of any parent resource center is to build positive relationships between the parents it serves and the local school district. Establishing those relationships calls for the PRC to be a friendly and welcoming place where parents know that they can get honest and fair advice from a sympathetic ear. The parents who reach out are often at a crossroads of sorts, or at the very least, they're dealing with some sort of uncertainty involving their child. They're seeking understanding and sound advice from a qualified professional. The majority of my time at the Parent Resource Center is spent answering emails and returning phone calls. Basically doing the best I can to answer these parents' questions in regards to the special education process and the laws that govern that process, and just helping them to plan for their child's continuing education. PRCs help to connect parents with resources and the community supports that their child may need. One example of a recent collaboration that Albemarle County Parent Resource Center did with Jefferson Madison Regional Library was to create a special collection that is available to anyone with a JMRL library card. And in that special collection, it's made up of books that are, some are educational and more written on to answer parents' questions type of thing, or to take a deeper look at types of disabilities. But there's also children's books that are, geared towards themes of inclusion and just fostering the sense that being different is okay. And that's important in our line of work. PRCs provide information to the broader community through maintaining websites and publishing newsletters and blogs. If you go to ACPS's website or even PREP's website for Stephanie's PRC, you can subscribe to our newsletters or blogs by going there. PRCs provide training and educational opportunities for both the parents and the students. And, best of all, the services provided by parent resource centers are free to all the families it serves. And you're on the right slide, Eric.
I'll step right in here. Why would you call a parent resource center? Well, to start with, if you suspect a disability, if you have a student who's really struggling or is having extra tantrums, refusing to go to school, clearly just really having a hard time, you can call us and we'll walk you through what might be going on, what kind of supports might be available. You may not need to go all the way to an IEP or a 504. There may be some things you can do just in communicating with the school that work. But if you need to go on to an evaluation, we'll help talk you through that process. Also, if you're newly diagnosed, as the parent of 2 kids who've been through special ed, it's scary. When you first get that diagnosis and you first know your child needs extra help, there is so much to learn. You're learning about whatever the challenges are, but then you've got to learn about what's available in the schools and what the legal options are and all the acronyms that start coming in. People start throwing alphabet soup at you. There are IEPs and 504s and BPAs, and it just goes on and on and on, and it gets very, very confusing. So we can help talk you through that. We can help you prepare for an IEP, whether it's your first IEP or your child's last IEP as they're leaving school. We can help you get ready for that and help your student get ready for that. We'll talk to you about how a student participates in an IEP and why that's incredibly important, that they start doing that as soon as possible, that they start self-advocating so that they're ready to take over when they move on to become as independent as they possibly can. We can also talk to you about what is a reasonable accommodation. We would all love to have the absolute best of everything for our kids, but the law says reasonable accommodations. So let's talk about what is reasonable. And that will vary by student, it will vary by disability, it will vary by setting. Your student may need more support in a math class and a bit less in art class or in reading. You just have to kind of figure out what kind of accommodations level the playing field for your students so they can participate with their other peers in general education. Also, the most important one on here is improving homeschool communication. Like I said, that IEP can be scary. I remember my first one being terrifying and it didn't go as well as I'd hoped. By the time my son was ready to graduate, IEP meetings were actually fun. Yes, really fun. We had great conversations. We had great ideas. My son was participating. It can really change the entire relationship between the family and the school when you start working together and when you understand that even special education teachers don't know everything about special education. And when you look at it, you've got the parent who specializes in the child, the teacher who specializes in education. When you begin to work together, you can support the student better than any of us can alone. And it really does make a huge difference. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry, this one is mine too. So this is about how Mike and I collaborate. We've done some professional development together, gone to the VDOE Connect for Success seminar that was held in Virginia Beach. We do newsletters and blog posts. I do newsletters, Mike does blog posts, and then we bounce them off each other so that we can share the information. Because we don't cover the same territories, we get information out differently, but there are a lot of activities that go on where all of our families could be included. Critical decision points. We've heard it brought up before, and we're actually in talks with VDOE about having a critical decision point session here in our area that would be open to all the local school divisions. So we're collaborating on that. With the Special Education Advisory Committee, Mike comes in and talks about what's going on with Albemarle County Public Schools, but I attend both as a SEAC member and as the PrEP PRC member so that I can go ahead and let everybody know what's happening all around. And I've been told to hurry it up, so I'm gonna hurry it up. We do exhibits together at the Autism Hope Summit most recently, and have to put in a huge plug for the big event we do together, which is the Life After High School Transition Conference and Resource Fair. And that is coming up March 25th at PVCC. Keep your eye out. We will be trying to plaster that information everywhere. And you want to attend that if you've got a student anywhere between age about 12 and finishing their schooling. Okay, Daphne, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And we have lastly, Ms. Thomas, lead special education teacher from Journey Middle School.
Hello. So I'm Chris Thomas. I am the special ed lead teacher here at Journey Middle School. And I've been here at Journey, I want to say since 1997. So even when it was back called Jewett. I started here as a special educator, teaching self-contained classrooms. And then Albemarle County started pushing more and more for inclusion. So it's been nice to hear all these other panelists talk about all the different programs and availabilities we have. So from a special ed teacher perspective, we have so many supports from Albemarle County to help us do our job and serve your children. So I started from the top. And you've already heard from our director of special education. We also have an assistant director of special education. A lot of times you think of directors as being sitting in their offices. That's not the way it works here. Anytime we have questions, concerns, they're there for us and they support us. We also have special education coordinators for elementary, middle school, and high school. That's our go-to person. I know whenever I have a question, I need an answer, need some support, I contact that coordinator and I do get what I need. We have specialists to help us for our base programs. You heard about our A-base, B-base programs, and we have autism behavior specialists and behavior specialists that come and support us. They do so many different things to help us out, from coming in to observe students, to consult with us, to help us develop strategies, materials that we can use with our students. We also have a specialized instruction specialist. So if we need more materials, more ideas in that way, we have a person that we can reach out to for that. Also from the county office, we can get funding, supplies, curriculum materials, and those are just the basics. Anything we may need, if the budget's there, they get us what we need to do our best jobs here. At the school-based level, our go-to person is our administration. Our administration know our special education students. They know how our department works, and they're there to support us. We have case managers, and that's the go-to person for the parents. Our special education case managers have a certain number of students on their caseload, and their responsibility is to make sure that the students' needs are being met based on their individual education plan. We also have related service providers, such as speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, and so on. We also have guidance counselors and mental health workers here at our schools. Our mental health workers are new now to Albemarle County within the last 2 years. They're amazing supports for our students and for our special education teachers and all of our staff here at our schools. We have amazing teaching assistants for our special education department, and they are in our classrooms to support those students. Can't see the rest of my slide, but we also have supports for parents from our school teams. We want to make sure that our parents know that they're a part of their child's education. Absolutely. The first go-to person for a parent would be to reach out to your child's case manager. And that person would be responsible or is responsible for making sure that they hear your needs, hear your concerns. We talk to our parents all the time. Communication is so important between the school and our parents. Our administration, our guidance counselors, and our general education teachers, we all work together and collaborate on a regular basis. Our special education teachers are not just special education teachers in our own little world at our schools. We attend the professional learning communities with all the other departments, and we're in all those classes, so that we are partnering with all the other teachers to make sure all students' needs are met.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Thomas, and to all the panelists. You have been incredibly helpful and informative. We're going to take about 30 minutes to answer questions from the panelists. We have a few come in through the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom, and feel free to keep sending those through, and we will answer in the order that we are receiving those. However, do feel free to email the superintendent's office at k12albemarle.org email address if you feel you have further questions or you do not get an answer due to lack of time. I do ask that if anyone has questions related to a specific incident, that they touch base with the school personnel as opposed to school division personnel. And that is probably the best way to get answers to those questions. We're going to go to our first question, and that question goes to ACPS. And I just want to make sure that because we have a few questions tonight. ACPS, so Mr. Kirst and Ms. Compel, what plans do you have for further training of special education teachers in the science of reading? Do you plan on adopting any programs that use the Orton-Gillingham approach to use with students who have learning disabilities in reading? Being a reader and SIPs don't seem to address the higher needs to students with learning disabilities in reading.
You want me to take this one? You want to take this one? You got it. Sure. So yes, great question. We have been and will continue to provide professional development, not just to special educators, but particularly for special educators in specialized instruction for reading. One of those that we have done is the Orton-Gillingham method, not just Orton-Gillingham, but Orton-Gillingham based method. We have been building for special educators a toolbox, so to speak, in each of the different areas. And one of those methods is Orton-Gillingham. We also have been because I wouldn't say that SIPS does not work for students with learning disabilities as a blanket statement. I think it is effective intervention, but is not the only answer. And so we try to build a toolbox. And one of those is Orton Gillingham. One of those is SIPS. And we've also done some other specialized instruction methods that individual students have responded to make sure that staff have a toolbox at their disposal to address the student need. Anything you feel like missing there?
No.
Cook, I saw you nod your head. I wondered if you wanted to add anything. I know this is an area near and dear to your heart.
It is an area near and dear to my heart. And I know many of the parents have probably listened to Sold a Story or any of Emily Hanford's podcasts. And it is so hopeful maybe sometimes to hope that the struggle is because of lack of core instruction. And it is such a complex area because all of our tiered systems are built on good quality instruction and then more intensive. And then at tier 3, we really are individually working. We're starting with that validated program and individually working with a specific student. And that takes a lot of teacher knowledge. And so I do know that the state has been taking a lot of leadership in that and providing some additional training. But many of the programs, just like Katie was saying, SIPS is a solid research-based program. It's not one of the ones you're going to hear about in Sold a Story, but any student may need more. And that's where you need a highly trained teacher to be able to look at the student's individual data and respond to that individual student. But we do need to make sure that before that, I love that Katie was saying we're doing the training for the gen ed teachers as well. The whole system is built on high quality tier 1 instruction in order to then see whose responses indicate they need more. So that training is really important. The toolboxes are really important. And I know that the state in general is working with Dr. Solari here at UVA and the PALS, and although it's renamed, I'm forgetting the name of it, but in terms of that office, really supporting. I think I'm very thankful for Emily Hanford's reporting that so many people, I didn't realize as a special educator, how the mismatch of instruction. I knew general education and special ed sometimes talk differently. I didn't realize some of the foundational differences between what some of the inappropriate or ineffective curriculum was really saying in terms of looking at the letter sound correspondence and that phonics being really critical at the early stages. And so you do know that the materials that are being used here but some of our kids are going to need more. So yes, more training. I've done letters training, I've done all of this. And I encourage every single one of the teachers that I worked with to continue to seek out professional development, to continue to know, because our job is working with that individual with the foundation of knowledge that we have and high quality curriculum, which they're being given by their school. So it is important, but it is sometimes, even given all the right stuff, it just takes, maybe 10 to 30 times more opportunities to respond to some given really high quality instruction for some of our students to finally have those kind of wheels go off and they're like, now I've got it. So it just does take some time.
All right, Dr. Cook. Well, the next question is for you. I noticed much of your research looks at supporting special education teachers to apply research-based practices, inclusion, dyslexia, and students with reading difficulties. What would you recommend as the next steps for teachers experiencing a huge growth in the number of students at all grade levels who need specialized instruction in reading, in co-taught settings and limited time and structures to provide those needed services?
That's a very complex question, a lot going on in there. What I do think I have done both been part of a meta-analysis, and I know so many people are saying Orton Gillingham. What we do know, we don't know that the multisensory components, no meta-analysis has shown that of Orton Gillingham that the multisensory component adds something above, statistically significant above structured literacy. We do know explicit systematic instruction from the beginning is needed, and that is what the science is saying, but it's not an and or an either or, it's an and decoding, and then the language comprehension and oral language and all the reading comprehension strategies on both sides. How to do that within a co-taught setting? I mean, the school division is using a response to intervention framework in terms of universal screening and finding those students that do need more. Once we do know that, I think the co-taught part may be a nod to an article that I've done some professional development in other states with some colleagues where that it's a model that the co-teachers use to identify the needs and then use the co-taught model, which should we do team teaching, should we do stations, what are we doing, what co-teaching models we're using, is directly in alignment with the needs of the students and the evidence-based practice that they're going to bring in. And so sometimes we can bring in something like K-PALS, which is not the assessment, but peer-assisted learning, into a kindergarten class, and that is going to increase the dosage of the letter sound correspondence for everybody, because maybe the data indicates everybody needs that, instead of just pulling out a few kids that might need supplemental tier 2 or providing additional push in for the kids that are identified or not. So there are ways to use co-teaching in a more nuanced way, depending on the needs of your school. But I'm sure that some of that training is being done, but of course, I'm happy to work with individual schools or teachers.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cook. So the next question is for Mr. Kurz. What should a parent do if a school denies SPED evaluation request from a parent? Independent evaluations are very expensive and booked far in advance. This student is showing specific signs of struggling in reading, but grades are fine at this time.
I got it. So the response is one, it's a regulatory response. So there are processes and procedures, one, to any parent that has a disagreement with the school. The first thing we're all compelled to do is give you a copy of your procedural safeguards, the procedural rights all parents have of children with disabilities, including those that went for an evaluation that parents disagree with. Included in there is a section on independent educational evaluation. So I want to correct the person that wrote the question and for the community that if you disagree with an evaluation, please read your rights. Independent educational evaluations can be requested at public cost in the event of a disagreement, but there are also a host of different procedures through dispute resolution, and then also working with your school. They should provide the reason why and a prior written notice. But again, I would say I'm not going to try and even pretend to know all the nuances as much as go to your procedural safeguards document and read about dispute resolutions to resolve the concern that you have with regard to your child's eligibility.
All right, thank you. The next question is also for ACPS. As a parent of a child who needs curriculum adapted and available electronically, I have found that although his IEP states he will have these accommodations, his school often has challenges due to staffing. My question is, why do special education teachers need to create this curriculum per student rather than a bank of adapted curriculum the county and special education leads can pull from? This would save time and provide improved inclusion. For the student.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess this is one of those questions where, you know, it's nuanced and it's very specific, right? And I don't know about the staffing thing, but if there's challenges, so one, we've worked very hard for adapted curriculum, through professional learning communities, through just networking of special educators to promote that. And we believe that that's something we've been doubling down on. Now, if it's a new teacher that has shared with the parent, I don't have any access to stuff, they need to go to their, as Chris has mentioned, there are many resources, including just their special ed coordinator to go, I'm struggling to get materials that are adapted. Now, adapted materials and print format, we have a number of different options, and we could do just a whole evening on AIM Virginia and adapted materials and networking. But I would encourage this person asking the question, I'm assuming a parent, is to talk with their case manager, if that's what's being shared, to connect to the special ed coordinator so that we could help support them. That is something we've explicitly and overtly had gone after. We don't want to make the work of teaching any more difficult than and complex than it is.
Right, and not reinvent the wheel every single time, which I think the question gets to.
That's correct. But we have examples of doing those things, but for the sake of time, it would be reach out and maybe we'll talk in the near future.
All right. The next question, again, for ACPS. Given ACPS's commitment to evidence-based practices, what plans are there to partner to develop residential services locally where the evidence-based practices are as robust as those for students who can live at home?
Yeah, so that's a good question, but it's one that there are many things in the works. So I sit on the CPMT, the Community Policy and Management Team, that's part of the Children's Services Act that I talked about earlier, that does provide residential services. Now, I will say residential services, there are less than 10 kids that in Albemarle County that are in residential programs. We do collaborate with social services as well, but sitting on this management team, that is something that we are working on. And I am aware of different agencies that want to bring more intensive services, but as Katie has mentioned, with the challenges of staffing by these private residential and private day programs, it has hindered their ability to expand to provide more support services in our community. I can't name any of the organizations that I've been dealing with because it's all in the works, and that would just not be a professional thing to do. But aware of it and working on it through networking and our community, yes, that is a real thing. We are actively trying to expand with our community partners.
All right, thank you. The next question is for Michael. Regarding the Parent Resource Center, I realize the primary channel is school to parents. However, does the Parent Resource Center also organize events or opportunities for parents to become resources for each other? In some ways, perhaps parents can be supports to each other.
So I think to answer that question, part of what the Parent Resource Centers do, and Stephanie would be included in that, is we do go to the SEAC meetings and we share information and opportunities with SEAC in the hopes, and I'm sure it happens, they go back to the schools that they represent and share it out with the parents in that community. Other things that we do is more introducing the parents to the types of supports and services that are available to them in the community. And a lot of those types of organizations provide that kind of training towards parents. So I'm hoping that, between those two things, that the parents would become more knowledgeable and be able to be resources to each other. And Stephanie, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on that as well, but.
A lot of that sort of communication happens during events like the Life After High School Transition Conference and Resource Fair. A lot of our parents get together and talk to each other and begin to form informal groups. There is also a transition council here in the area that covers a much broader area than just Albemarle County. And that is a group of parents and professionals, teachers, community members, businesses who all get together and work toward having our kids ready for that giant leap that comes after high school. And parents are always encouraged to join us for that. they can email me at any time and I can add them to the list. And that will also connect them with other organizations.
All right, thank you so much. This next question, our university partners can chime in on this as well as ACPS. The individual is interested in the percent of special education students who are identified based on a specific reading disability. Maybe talk about the percentages at the state and national level. Has this grown over time? And then specifically for ACPS, what our percentages look like?
I know nationally, but I don't know your numbers. But typically about 15% of the school age children might have a learning disability, and about 80% of those are going to have difficulty with reading. That is, it's a language-based processing, and most students are going to struggle with literacy skills, reading and writing. I don't know the numbers here. I do know that slowly over time, I think back in the day when I first entered the classroom, about a little under than 10% of the students were identified, and now we have about 13%. But any of the numbers, it's really difficult to tell because we have changed and fine-tuned some of the diagnostic components when we changed from a discrepancy model to a response to intervention model, although both are still appropriate for identifying students with learning disabilities. We didn't see huge changes in the numbers, at least nationally, that we might have expected, but I'm not sure how your local numbers have or have not changed.
Yeah, I could at least speak to the specific question, which was, right, what number of kids have reading issues with learning disability? We don't collect that data. We don't get that specific. So honestly, Albemarle County Public Schools doesn't have that data. We have percent. I don't have it right in front of me, but it doesn't, because kids could have a specific learning disability, and by specific defined by Virginia code is in the area, right, of it could be math, operations, or problem solving. It could be written expressions, reading. So there are different components, but we don't break them down for a statistic.
Just like rates with students with autism can have difficulty with reading skills, or students with emotion, it doesn't tell you that just reading.
That's right. So unfortunately, my answer is a non-answer.
All right, I think those are all of our questions. I just want to double check with my team that's monitoring the chat. I think we have answered the questions that have come through the chat. And so I'd like to thank everyone so much. We are coming to the end of our time. You can see that we put the email address, again, Superintendent's Office at k12albemarle.org in the chat. So you can send additional questions and or request information. Briefly to close, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Irizarry. However, before doing this, I would like to again thank our panelists for their time. Lauren Hunt and Ayana Mitchell for fielding questions and monitoring the chat. Dr. Haas for attending the event, Gary Moore for technology support, and Eric Irizarry, who you will hear from last, managing the slide deck. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, we have recorded this session and will send it out to our entire community. The session will be up on our YouTube channel, so you will have access to it. I cannot encourage you enough to email the support, the Superintendent's Office at k12albemarle.org email address in the chat. I'm going to put it in the chat one more time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Irizarry, Director of Equity, School, Family, and Community Relations.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser. And again, thank you to Dr. Kaiser, Dr. Haas, and our panelists and our team behind the scenes to make this happen. We're committed, the Office of Community Engagement is committed to getting input from our stakeholders and taking that information and really trying to figure out how can we make ACPS a better place for our staff and for our families. And we're also committed to information sessions like this. We're calling these community information sessions, and we're interested in hearing from our stakeholders topics that interest them or that they want to hear more about. So last month we did a session on school safety. This was obviously special education, and we're going to be looking at career learning pathways in our next session. So, these are just topics to get information directly out to our stakeholders. So if you have any ideas or if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, please email that same address and we'd be happy to take a look at that and make that happen. And again, the best thing you can do for our families here and our community partners is be an active partner with our schools. So in this presentation on our community engagement website, you'll see QR codes on how to volunteer in our schools. Or if you belong to an organization or you work for an organization that wants to be involved with our schools are open, and we are really looking to build our partnerships here in our community, in our region. So there are QR codes for that. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for going over a little bit for our panelists. And again, you'll see us next month, and we'll have more information about our next community information session.
Thanks, everyone, for a fantastic session. Have a good evening.